Hello and welcome everybody to another Tuesday afternoon program with the Genealogy Center. For those of you who have not attended our programs before, welcome. For those of you who are coming back, welcome back. There are a couple of things we should go over. This program is not a formal presentation. It is very much a Q&A session, hence Ask the Experts, which I have with me my colleague Sarah Allen, who is one of our senior genealogy librarians, and she's also our in-house DNA expert, as well as Kurt Witcher, who is the manager of the Genealogy Center. So a lot of experts here with us today. Before we get started, I'm just going to share my screen and show you where you can find some of our upcoming programs. Now, there is no handout for today's program, but if you want to see what we have coming up, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of our homepage, which is genealogycenter.org, you'll see this box that says Genealogy Events. And you'll see what we have coming up. So on Thursday, which is the first Thursday of every month, we do have an in-person DNA interest group, which my colleague Sarah leads. So if you are local to us, tune in for that. And then on Tuesday, we will have a program at 2:30 called Why Family History Needs Historians. Definitely tune into that. That is going to be a good one.
Sounds very intriguing.
I know, right? Yeah. Another thing I want to point out is that if you go up here to Genealogy Services and click Genealogy Gems, which I'll put a link to this in the chat, but this is where you can register for our monthly e-zine. It goes out on the last day of every month. It has a lot of really great articles about different stuff we have in the collection, little history tidbits, as well as a handy dandy list of all the programs we have coming up for the next month with links to where you can register. So if you don't subscribe to Genealogy Gems, definitely take a look at this. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So if you have questions, use the Q&A box for your questions just so they don't get lost. But if you want to share resources and chat and collaborate, use the chat button for that.
So while we're waiting for people to get signed in, comfortable, letting us know where they're from, etc., how about maybe the three of us, and anyone can chime in with a question or a comment. We would certainly welcome that. But why don't we have a little quick discussion about what conference have you physically been to recently, why or why not, and maybe even a little bit of a conversation about the benefits of going to a conference virtually and or physically. So we'll put that out there as a question. If my colleagues don't mind, I will lead off to, I think there are three really important things about a conference. You all may not agree with me totally, maybe partially, maybe completely. The first thing I think clearly is a great place to get information. These virtual programs that we offer, we're so glad people continue to find them of value. And we evaluate that by the fact that you show up and you register for them. So I think that all of us find free virtual programs, seminars that you have to pay for, multiple day programs, virtual or in person or hybrid, both. I think one of the things that's really important for conferences, programs, seminars, webinars is the informational value. If you're stuck or just interested in a particular area and you want to up your knowledge of that area, if you're looking for German Lutherans in the early 19th century, you don't know where to go, you can go to Conference Keepers, you can Google, you can do all kinds of things. There are many tools you can use to find who's offering a seminar, a virtual program, a webinar, or is that part of a conference program. Conferences, seminars, webinars, I think are a great way to get good information, solid information, to expand our own information pool. Sometimes when we stay kind of head down for a while doing our own research, we get pretty myopic, we get pretty laser focused, and it's good to get different perspectives. So that information coming to us from a different person, from a different source, can chump some new ideas and give us some new places to check. The second thing that I think is important about conferences, virtual programs, seminars, is what you all in this in this virtual program do really well, and that's network with each other. I know that my colleagues, Elizabeth, Sarah, Allison, always muse about all the different conversations that go on in chat, sometimes related to the program, sometimes not related to the program, and that you all help each other out, that you network, you let each other know of different sources that maybe the presenter's not talking about, and about different subjects that the presenter may not be talking about at all. And the third component that I think is perhaps valued more since the pandemic, even though we're a couple of years beyond the pandemic now, is that socialization. Kind of goes hand in glove with networking, but we just get to spend time with people, right? Whether we can see and talk to them live or whether we can interact with them chat, we're still having an opportunity to have some socialization, some social interaction. I can tell you there are brighter minds than mine that are looking for and musing about how we can make virtual programs more sociable, more social interaction, and not necessarily always so information heavy. So those are my three big components: education, network, and socialization. But I'll just throw it out there to my colleagues and to anyone in the chat or the Q&A.
Some people in the chat shared what conferences that they had been to. So one person said that they went to two conferences in the last 2 weeks. One was GRIP. For those of you who are not aware of what that conference is, I'm going to put a link to that in the chat. And the other one was the Texas State Genealogical Society's conference. So I'm going to throw that one in the chat too, just in case y'all want to know what some of these are. Somebody else said that they had went to Roots Tech in person, which is always a good one. But I agree. It's good. You know, the socialization is such a big part of it, but at the same time, you don't always get the opportunity to go out to these places in person. So getting that content, just learning maybe some new ideas to help with your research, that's really valuable stuff.
Absolutely.
I would add that sometimes the host city is a very important part of attending a conference in person. So like, for instance, Roots Tech is in Salt Lake City. So a lot of people will combine that with going to the Family History Library. The conferences that we hold here at Fort Wayne, obviously the people are going to be able to then come to our library and do research in the Genealogy Center, which they may not have been able to do, but they're going to kill two birds with one stone by coming into town for this conference and then heading over to the Genealogy Center. Back in the day, this is a long time ago, my mother and I used to go to a lot of genealogy conferences, and we would go to them because of where they were being held. So if they were held in Virginia and we wanted to do Virginia research on the side, we would, make a little side trip. We drove to most of these places, and made a side trip on the side to a different county courthouse, or went to the Library of Virginia during the off times when the program was not going on. Same thing in North Carolina. We would, make a little genealogy side trip to go see some ancestors, houses or cemeteries or whatever. So those can be a reason for going to an in-person conference too. So not only did we have ancestors that were from Virginia, so the conference was being held in Virginia, and there were a lot of Virginia sessions in the conference that were talking about how to research people from Virginia. So it was like all Virginia all the time. But that would have been like the NGS or the FGS conference went back when FGS was still with us. And yeah, so that's another reason why we went to conferences in person.
And if we can put in a shameless plug,
yes,
for a great in-person conference, I can springboard off of what you said, Sarah, that just about 35, 34 days from now, the International Association of Jewish Genealogical Societies will be holding their annual conference here in Fort Wayne. And there are more than a few people that I know that are attending the conference because it's here in Fort Wayne and because they want to use the Genealogy Center's collection. So Elizabeth has shared that screen. It's really a good conference if you want to focus on Eastern European research, Jewish research, and you get access, extended hour access to the Genealogy Center as well. So that's coming right up, just a little over a month from now. So check it out. Check out the website, IAJGS 2025. So we do have 2 questions in the Q&A, and it probably would be a good time to start at least on one of them. I have all kinds of thoughts about the first one. I'll just go ahead and read it if that's okay, Elizabeth.
Go for it.
I have located my German ancestors on the Germans to the US database. Yeah, the Germans to America database. The last place of residence is listed as, not even going to try to pronounce that, which is a city in Germany. Which is not a city in Germany. It's a city in Wisconsin. The records in the US state the family was from West Prussia. The question that I'm hearing in that comment makes me smile, because Germans to America initially was a pretty flawed set. I think some corrections, additions, modifications, etc. have been made to it. But as with any published source, you always want to check the veracity of the information that you have or that's presented to you. I have to smile real widely when it first came out, because people found all kinds of Germans that came to America, but they weren't in this amazing set, Germans to America. And they had forgotten, I'll use air quotes for forgotten, they had forgotten that many Germans left whatever was considered Germany at the time and went to Liverpool on their way to America. And so the original indexers, data gatherers, didn't consider any of those Germans coming on ships out of Liverpool, because clearly they weren't Germans coming from Germany. So they were English people coming to America, except no, they were Germans taking a very common route to America. So yeah, I don't know what to say on this one, except yeah, there are all kinds of mistakes.
Well, in that place, I think it's Winnacone.
Okay.
I think that's how that's pronounced. That's a village in Wisconsin, in
Right.
Winnebago County. It's
Right. And that's what they were saying. It's a city in
Yeah.
Wisconsin. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Not in
Well,
Germany. So yeah, there are transcription errors, keying errors. Any published source really needs a veracity check. Like, is this accurate? Is this true? Can I document it? They can provide you with great leads. And again, I believe the set has been enhanced, corrected, modified, enhanced since its original publication, but still, I read more than a decade ago articles about people who evaluated the data that's presented in print and then presented on Ancestry. And yeah, there were a few things that made you raise an eyebrow, but nothing's perfect. We just try to use it to the best of our ability to get whatever kind of leads or clues or tips that we can out of it.
yeah. So I was going to say, I mean, that set is going to refer you to the ship's name and the port that it came into and the date that it came in. And you can get that passenger list that they have abstracted in Germans in America on some of the online sites, either Ancestry, Family Search, maybe another site or two. And you want to double check that. That's kind of what Kurt's saying, but I'm just going to really go granular here and tell them exactly what needs to happen and see what it says. Exactly. So double check that yourself. And depending on maybe if this doesn't get you to their original village name, which it sounds like maybe you want to find out where they were from in Germany, you might try the church records that are in Wisconsin. If they were Catholic or Protestant, there may be some good church records that were recorded here in the US that tell the home village that this family came from. So that would be, and a lot of those records are not online. Many of them are not. Some might be, but this might involve a lot of digging back into Wisconsin in that local area where they lived and settled.
Absolutely. Great advice. Do we want to forge on to the next question that Rose has offered us?
I think so. Oh, somebody asked what was the name of that website?
Germans to America is a book series.
It's also on Ancestry, I believe.
Yeah, it is on Ancestry. Yeah.
I think the database on Ancestry that that's pulling from is like US German immigrants, like 1712 to 1933. I think that's the one. Okay, so the next question, how do you handle the birthplace of a person who said that they were born in Alabama on the 1850 and 1860 census, but Alabama didn't exist? The person was actually born in the Mississippi Territory.
There are all sorts of things in it, and I could think of initially, and I should have prefaced this at the beginning of the hour. I tend to be a little bit of a confusionist, meaning I love to gather data before racing to one conclusion right away. So it's interesting that the census said they were born in Alabama in 1850 and 1860, but it didn't exist. So were they indicating at that time that it was Mississippi Territory? Well, who knows what the enumerator was thinking, right? It's hard for us to go back 100+ years and climb inside their head and see what they were thinking. But are there possibly clues that one could get? Who else was enumerated in Alabama where it was possibly the Mississippi Territory? Are we really looking at original census documents or abstracts, transcriptions? I'm assuming, Rose, that you're looking at original, like on Ancestry or on Family Search census records. It's a great question. It could be just totally made by mistake, but I'm thinking it's also very possible that there's a reason why it said Alabama before Alabama
Well,
officially existed.
I could be misinterpreting some of this question, but so she's saying that on the 1850 and 1860 census.
Well, the person was born in Alabama before it was a state.
Yes.
Right?
So then the enumerator is going to use whatever the location is then. I mean, sometimes they don't.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing. We can't climb in the head of the enumerator to say, okay, why did he call this Alabama 45 years ago in the case of the 1850 census, or 37 years ago in the case of the 1860, going back to pre-statehood for Alabama? Why would he say that?
Yeah. And
How
also
do we
the
know?
enumerator might not have known.
Right.
Yeah.
And if the person said born in Alabama, the enumerator isn't necessarily going to check that information for its accuracy. They're just interviewing the person. I don't think it would provide any clarity, Rose, but it would be fascinating to look at that publication. I believe you can Google it and find it online at Google Books or Internet Archive. But I believe the title, Sarah and Elizabeth, you can help me out, is something like 20 years, which means 20 decades, if you will, of census questions. It's basically a book that says which questions were asked of enumerators which questions enumerators were given to ask individuals, and then the actual instructions enumerators were given to record information, what to do when someone wasn't home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That might be interesting just to see if there's even anything at all that might shed a little tiny ray of sunshine on this question. But my guess is the enumerator asked someone in 1850 where you were born, and if they thought they were born in Alabama, even before Alabama was a state, they could easily say Alabama, and no one's going to check that, right? No one's going to say, yeah, it was the Mississippi Territory. I don't know.
Enumerators, they didn't care that much to fact check people.
Yeah. And I don't know, is she asking us how she records it in her genealogy software, or, like what is the meat of her question exactly? Is she trying to figure out how to record it in her family data is what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
I don't know. And with that, I think you just pick something and go with it.
Well,
and maybe add an explanation.
Yeah. Exactly what you were reading my mind, Sarah, or I was reading yours. Use the note features on all genealogical data management programs, the online ones and the off-the-shelf ones. I know Roots Magic has a fairly robust notes capability, appended to, tied to, hooked to several different fields. So yeah, that's a great piece of advice, Sarah. Note all of that.
If we're not answering your question, send us an email.
Go back on, yeah.
Yeah. Our email is genealogy@acpl.info, which I just put in the chat. But yeah, if for some reason we're like totally off base as to what you're asking, just send us an email. We'll discuss further. So Mary said, when a name is Americanized, quote unquote, was there a legal process? I have an ancestor from Poland who came to Illinois in the early 1900s. No. There is no legal process. People just changed their names. It did not happen at Ellis Island. Ellis Island did not change your ancestors' names, I promise.
Which is a common myth, a commonly repeated lore.
There is a article that a former colleague from the New York Public Library wrote, titled, I'm going to put a link to it in the chat, Why Your Family Name Was Not Changed at Ellis Island. And the one exception, there is one exception, but you are not that exception, I promise.
You can change your name through naturalization.
Yes.
So if you have your ancestors' naturalization records and they say that, it's kind of sometimes in some small print, kind of in the middle, kind of hidden a little bit, but it'll say like your ancestor came over as so and so on the ship, and then they want to change their name to such and such, and then they'll give the new name. I've seen that before.
If it isn't done after the point of immigration, like through naturalization, and that could be for reasons just to assimilate or business reasons or just being accepted by the community, then it happened before traveling. They chose the name because at Ellis Island, they're just checking that the information on the card on your clothes matches what's on the ship manifest. That is it. They got too many people to go through to be picking new names for everybody.
And sometimes what people think of as changing their names is actually just kind of like Americanizing it a little bit, like dropping a weird Z in the middle and leaving an S in there or something like that. That's not changing your name.
Right. And a few times maybe even dropping a syllable, but I would concur with you, Sarah, that that's not really changing the name. Yeah. So I have a story ripped from my family history headlines. So on my turn of last century, from the 1800s to the 1900s ancestor, I have, I think, just over a half a dozen. I think it's 7 documents that evidence this person's life, right? Frank Woocher Witcher. On none of those 7 documents is the surname spelled the same way. Is it being Americanized? No, it's just being spelled phonetically by whomever's around to spell that name before my ancestors were literate and even after that they were literate. So 7 different names to spell my current surname. And, only one of them was Witcher. And that's just over time, people spelled the name more closely to how they thought they heard it, how they thought it was being said, but there was no legal or official process that would record or verify that each one of those spellings was indeed tied to my ancestor at that time. It's based on that old term we don't hear much anymore. The genealogical proof standard kind of supplanted that. But recall, before the GPS, before the genealogical proof standard, there was that concept called the preponderance of evidence. You gather all the documents you can, all the evidence you can, and then you make a case based on the preponderance of evidence. So how do I know that was my Frank Woocher and those 7 documents? Well, you start, okay, where was he? Who was he married to? What kids did he have? Did he have more kids in 10 years to the next census records? The kids he had 10 years ago, were they around 10 years older? I mean, all those kinds of basic fundamental evidence analysis type activities. That's what you do to verify that, yes, this is the same person. And Americanized or changed surnames typically were not documented in legal documents.
Spelling doesn't count in genealogy.
Right.
Even my surname, which is not a foreign sounding surname at all, and we wouldn't have had a language barrier in talking to American census takers, it can be spelled Ollen, and like with the vowels, it just kind of changes weirdly. So Allen can be spelled multiple different ways as well, and has been in American records, and it's not because my ancestors are changing their name. It's just sounding it out, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I mean, my sister-in-law's married name is Weir, but it's spelled Weir. That's usually pronounced Weir. I can think of only one other person who outside of that family I've ever known to pronounce Weir, like where. But I mean, I got far enough back on that tree to someone born in the Revolutionary era, and his headstone says Weir. I'm like, Rob, you're gonna have to change your name. You're gonna have to start pronouncing it as weird. I've traced my family to early 1700s Virginia and have all kinds of records indicating where they were, including land records, quarter session records, revolutionary records, neighbors' records, and tracked them like with their neighbors. So they've traced all these people to Fairfield County, Ohio, where they are listed as pioneers in the county history. My problem is that I can't tie them to other families of that name in any of the likely places. And she lists off Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, etc. How do I find out where they came from originally? Help. That's very specific. Susan, why don't you send us an email with like some more specifics about this question, like some names and things and where specifically people were, and we can give you some more concrete suggestions. But do you have anything off the top of your head, Sarah? Or Kurt?
Well, I'm thinking about DNA. She's in the early 1700s, so the autosomal test is probably not going to be the one. But if she has a male relative who is descended paternally back this line, she could possibly have that person do a Y-DNA test, which is of the male paternal line, and possibly get matches to other men of the same surname and see who their earliest known ancestor is, and then work together with those men to try to put together how you might all be related. This would be one method, and it would rely on Susan actually having a male line relative in the appropriate family that she's researching, but who has that same surname that she's researching. But that DNA test is offered by Family Tree DNA Testing Company, and she could do a 37 marker test to begin with and just see what kind of matches she gets before she springs for one of the more expensive tests that they offer.
So I'm going to go a little bit out on a limb here. Again, as you articulated, Elizabeth, maybe a little more specific information in an email to us might be helpful. So Susan says, my problem is that I can't tie them to other families of that name in any of the likely places. So where you do find the family, and here it's Fairfield County, Ohio, right? They were pioneers, early settlers of Fairfield County, Ohio. Well, instead of looking for their surname in other likely places, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, what about doing a little bit of the fan approach, friends, associates, and neighbors? Who are they with in early kind of pioneer Fairfield County, Ohio, and see if you can find some of those families in the likely area of Maryland or Pennsylvania or New York, and then see if you can kind of sidebar your way into or use the fans approach to get back to an area where you can do a little more thorough of a search for people of the surname that you're looking for. Just a thought.
I see some people put some suggestions in the chat, like look at land records, look for first purchase, all that good stuff. Yeah, definitely do that.
That is a long one. Let's see how we can dissect this. Have been trying to find parents of my 3 times great grandfather, James Bracy Oliver. According to Montgomery County, Ohio history, he arrived in Dayton, which is the county of Montgomery, in Dayton, along on horseback alone, I guess, on horseback in 1805 from Augusta County, Virginia. According to history, he was a drunkard, tried to find local church he might have attended, but they have no records. Contacted Church of the Brethren Library in Ohio, but they said they have no records. Have searched records of Augusta County, Virginia, but have found nothing by that name. Researched all his children to see where they said their parents were from in Virginia. Got his will records, but nothing about his parents. He married Mary Hardman in 1810. I have looked at what other people had in their trees, which is John Oliver and Elsie Wade, married in Pennsylvania, and they lived there. No record of them being in Virginia. The other thing is the people that have John and Elsie in their tree have no support to back it up. So no documentation. I know we all find that shocking, just simply shocking. I did find a record in Augusta County, Virginia, of a John Oliver who died but had no will. I guess I'm going to start out with the easy part of it, and that is there's no easy answer here that I'm aware of. So you have a lot of very specific locations. So you have Montgomery County, Ohio, you have Augusta County, Virginia. Again, as I self-identified earlier, because I'm a bit of a confusionist, maybe you pause on this question first and say, is there any kind of migration path, any push or pull of migration from Augusta County, Virginia to the county in Ohio, Montgomery County, Ohio? Just see. Increasingly so, there are ethnic publications as well as religious publications that try to give us, as family historians, a heads up, like, why did Dunkards come here? Why did they from Augusta County, Virginia, come to Montgomery County, Ohio? You have a good bit of information there. I keep digging. You've done all the reasonable things. Are there other record groups that you haven't checked that might give you some clues, some tips?
If you haven't used Family Search's AI, like full text search, play with it. Because I'm going to share my screen. I just did a casual search of James B. Oliver. When you're doing a search, you can try the full name. You could try first initial, middle initial, last name. And when I do the search personally, I leave everything else blank and I'll filter it down over here on the left by place and by time frame. So I've filtered it down to Montgomery County, Ohio. You can filter it down to the decade. So you can pick 1800s, 1810s, etc. And you can also filter down by record type. So maybe look at some deeds, see if you can find like an early deed or something. I saw something about court records. Look at probate too, because what if he didn't go alone? Maybe he went with another family member that died, that left him something. You never know. So play around with this for both of these locations and see what you can find. So if you haven't done this already, do this. Family Searches, full text search. The way to find it is when you're logged into Family Search, which you got to be logged in. And if you don't use Family Search, you should make an account. The account is free. My data hasn't been sold yet that I'm aware of, so don't worry about that. Just do it. So when you're logged in, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, under Family Search Labs, click View Experiments, and then expand your search with full text search. The first time you use it, it'll say try it, so just click on that. After that, just click Go to Experiment. And put names in quotes. There are going to be a lot of those, a lot of James B. Olivers, but you can filter it down. Cool. Anything to add, Sarah?
I was helping somebody the other day from a similar county in Virginia, and we were looking at migration routes, and into that area of Virginia, that is basically on the Great Wagon Route, which came down from Pennsylvania into that part of Virginia there over in the mountains on that mountainside of Virginia. So they could very well have been from Maryland or Pennsylvania prior to coming to Augusta County. doesn't really help you with your question, but it's just a little tidbit that I had learned the other day from helping somebody else. You might also benefit from a Y-DNA test. If you have a male Oliver relative that you could get tested, you should maybe be able to find matches to other Oliver families and go from there to triangulate with them and see if you can get back further that way.
As someone
One of
pointed
our-
out, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I was gonna say, one of our friends in the chat pointed out that with the family search, full text search, there's certain things you might not be able to see at home. You might need to go to a family history library or an affiliate. We're an affiliate, so that's why I can see a lot of things. I just put a link in the chat to where you can like put in your zip code and see where you can find an affiliate library near you. But a lot of public libraries are.
That's what I was going to say. So great minds. All right.
Where and how to determine who enslaved my ancestors in 1830 Mississippi, trying to figure out how they got to Mississippi from North Carolina. A lot of that is going to be like land records, like bills of sale, probate records too.
So I'm just, again, reading this more carefully to myself. Where and how can I determine who enslaved my ancestors in 1830 Mississippi? Trying to figure out how they got to Mississippi from North Carolina. Michelle, you probably have done this, but if they're more recently in in Mississippi from North Carolina, how they got to Mississippi, I would research the heck out of Mississippi and whatever location they were at, even after Mississippi, to try to pick up as many tips, clues, whatever I could, so that I'd have a clearer place in North Carolina. North Carolina has a tremendous number of records, many of them still on microfilm, many on Family Search, many on Ancestry. We've got over 10,000 rolls of North Carolina microfilm in our collection. Again, percentage of which I don't believe are online yet, but all that's just a tortured way of saying, your question's a good one because you need to narrow it down to a county. You can't just be looking all over North Carolina. There's a lot to look through. So how they got to Mississippi from North Carolina. So my first question would be where in Mississippi, like what county in Mississippi, and try to research that county to see if there's any way that one could tell, were there counties that people from various parts of North Carolina migrated to Mississippi and settled in. Without a look, you may never really discover that. I know it's like at a 65,000 foot level when you and I are researching like at a 2-inch level. But the whole idea of migration, the pushes and pulls of migration, what pushes someone out of an area, what draws someone into an area. So what drew them to Mississippi, and sometimes there are absolute migration. I call them migration trails. There's no real trail there, but migration patterns, if you will. Unless you look for it, you just sometimes don't find them. Why that's always so solid in my mind is that there is a migration pattern, a migration trail from a couple of Alabama counties to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And there was a reason for that. It had to do with family, had to do with chain migration, had to do with employment, and it had to do with getting out of the Black Belt states. It's, exploring for that reason may give you, a county in North Carolina to continue researching, if I'm reading that correctly.
I would say that also you may have already done this, of course, but in the first census after the slaves were freed in 1870, where is your family living at that time? And you can start examining the census pages page by page, going a few pages before, a few pages after. And generally speaking, they're still living in the area where they had been enslaved. They haven't yet moved. the war was just over. They just got freed very, very recently. And so they're usually living in the same area, and the enslaving family is still living right there as well, often. And so if you're studying the neighbors in the neighborhood, they're gonna be living with their friends and relatives who are Black, but then the white families that you find living nearby may be the enslavers or relatives of the enslavers. Like, it's all just right there, really local. So if you do a big study of that kind of neighborhood where they are in 1870, you might get some clues to kind of follow up on.
So she said, what county? I know
Okay.
exactly where this county is. Monroe County. It's on the Mississippi-Alabama state line between Tupelo and Starkville. For those familiar with the geography of the state of Mississippi, that's a pretty rural county. So that can, if you research the enslavers in the area to death, to the point where you can figure out, okay, which of them might have come here from North Carolina, as Kurt said, like that can help. Yeah. If you want more suggestions, send us an email. We can talk more. Is there a best way to form a timeline? And what should I include in that timeline to be most effective?
The answer is yes. That's the short answer to the second part of that question. What should I include in that timeline? As robust as you can. It's been a couple years since I looked at timeline making programs that will help you make a timeline. There are such things. My guess is now there are a lot of shareware, freeware, download type things. But timelines, I love that question because Galena, you're so correct. It is so important to put our families in the proper historical context. And one of those beautiful contexts is what's going on in the community, the county, the state, the country at the time that you're doing research. I know it sounds ridiculous to some of us, but in my career here at the Allen County Public Library, I've had people who've come to me with a fractured small family in 1870 and a larger, younger family in 1860 that had property, had a two-parent household in 1870. Again, fractured, smaller family, lost property, lost real estate. They have no idea what might have happened between 1860 and 1870 that would have caused a family to lose the head of the household, lose their farm, lose older males, etc. And I know that sounds like ridiculous, but it's happened. It's happened over a reference desk here in Fort Wayne. But the minor things are really important too. Was the railroad coming through? Was a canal being dug? Were there immigrant populations to do some of that work? How did that affect the community? How did the community transition from frontier to more settled? What caused that settlement? Why did people stop here? What's going on with land? Did Revolutionary War and War of 1812, where your ancestor ended up, was that a section of bounty land? I mean, just what's going on in the community? What's the economy like? The boom or bust economy. There's just so much to plot along that timeline. And then please, after you make a timeline, even if it's not very detailed, take a look at it and just ask yourself those questions. So why is there a group of Irish here now in Fort Wayne, Indiana at this time period? Why did my ancestor come here? When did the church that he or she joined, when was that church established? Are there other churches? I mean, just the whole kind of a history snapshot of the area. What's there? When did it start? Plotting your ancestor along an economic timeline, a military timeline. Try to chum as much information on that timeline as possible. What's going on with the economy? What's going on with business writ large? Like, did banking take off? Was there land speculation? Again, was this area part of tracts of bounty land, canals, railroads? Did that impact people coming here? Mining, were strikes. You know, there were strike breakers. A lot of African Americans were strike breakers in Southern Illinois. Tim Pinnock has written articles and books about that. So that would cause them to become infused in a community for maybe a short period of time, and then sometimes for a longer period of time if they stayed on after the strike. So yeah, history, we're doing family history, right? So history and historical context really has to be, should be really important. I'm sure my two colleagues have much wiser and more precise things to say than that, but yes, kudos to
Kind
you
of
for wanting to do a
summarized
timeline.
it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, from a practical standpoint, a lot of the genealogy programs, if you have a desktop genealogy program that you enter your family research into, such as Legacy Family or Legacy software or Family Tree Maker, Roots Magic, they all do timelines for you. They will, well, at least that's my impression. And Ancestry may also on their family tree section. I'm not quite sure on the online version, but there are a lot of ways to generate kind of like a timeline for yourself kind of automatically through different software programs and apps and such. But
Chat GPT.
Oh gosh.
AI. Yeah. I mean, like maybe fact check some of the events, because it's not magic, right? It is a large language model, which means it's putting words together that make sense. So fact check things, as we do, as we should do anyway. But if you give some basic high point dates for an ancestor's life, birth, marriage, death, they lived in these places in this time frame, and say, can you create a historical timeline centered around this person's life?
And if I can add to that, just to try to get you a robust timeline, love that birth, marriage, death, hatched, matched, dispatched. We want to grab those dates. But if you know when the person graduated from the 4th grade, put that date in the timeline.
Put all the dates in.
Yeah. You know that they paid taxes because you looked at a tax roll. Here's the guy who paid taxes. And put in, he paid 1867 taxes in this particular county. Yeah, to chum in as much as you can to see if you can tease out as much historical context as possible.
Timelines are fun. So this next question, I love it. I love it a lot. Christine, she said that she is absolutely brand new to this. She said that her father had an account with Ancestry for a brief time. She gathered some information about her great-great-grandfather. She wants to know more. I've never used the genealogy department at ACPL. Can you walk through what the process would look like if I came and spent a day there researching? And what advice would you have for beginners?
I would call that a real softball question, which I'm so grateful for, Christine. I mean, that is a great question. Please know that my colleagues and I are taking this question very seriously, but honest to goodness, if you can make it here, please stop. We do pop-up consultations, and I do hardly any of them. It's Elizabeth and Sarah and Christina and Allison and John and Logan that do these pop-up consultations. They're really good. I can say that because I don't do many. They're really good. Stop in. We will get you started on a database like Ancestry. We can show you tips and tricks on how best to search Ancestry to find really good things that fit what you're looking for. We can walk you through the startup process. Oh my goodness. As manager of the Genealogy Center, I so invite you to stop by here if you can. If you want to use the forms on our website or send us an email, Elizabeth has popped that email in several times during the chat, and say, hey, I'm going to be here on July 7th. Do you have any time that I could schedule a consultation? Can I have a 9:30? Can I have an 11 o'clock consultation on July 7th? And we will work to accommodate that. And high 90% of the time we can say, yes, we can do a consultation. We can do a consultation then. We love helping people find information, find their family stories in our collection. I have to say this, we have an amazing collection. It's like north of 1.2 million physical items. We license some of the major databases, like all of them, Ancestry, Find My Past, My Heritage, a lot of minor databases. But really, Christine, at the end of the day, that means nothing, absolutely nothing if you can't find your family and your family story in our collection. So that's what our team here is all about, is helping you find information and data, helping you find your story in our collection. So please don't be intimidated by our size. Please don't think, oh my gosh, I'm going to look stupid. Oh my gosh, I don't know what question to ask. Just come in and say, hey, I'd like to get started. Any names and dates and places that you can grab before you come in, like I know my parents and my grandparents, jotting those down on a piece of paper. But don't feel like you have to, like, you're not cramming for a high school exam before you come in. Just gather up what you can, what you have in your head, and come on in. We can help you organize. We can help you get started. We can help you tap into what I think is a really amazing collection of resources, both in print and online. So thank you for that question. Would love to have you come in and use our department, both the physical materials and the experience and intellect of our staff.
Yeah, we won't do all your research for you. It's not like finding your roots, but that's part of the fun, is
Right.
going on that journey of discovery
Right.
yourself, and we want to help you with that journey. So yeah, come in and visit us. That'll be great. Anything to add, Sarah?
No, I
Yes.
mean, if you wanted, we do a little pop-up with the consultation. We would do a little pop-up tour of the department too, just show you where things are and how to get around. And we have a nice map in case you get lost. We don't have panic buttons yet for people to push in the back, but if they get lost, but yeah.
But there's an idea. That's
you can-
what write that one down.
Yeah, you can yell out and
Send
someone will help you. Yeah.
Marco. So we have time for one last question, and this is not a softball question, but it's a good one. Mary said that she traced her ancestor back to a Cherokee reservation in Virginia. The name he used was not his Cherokee name. Is there a way to learn more about him without knowing what his Cherokee name was? He went to a plantation and took on the last name of the plantation owner.
Look deep, look wide, look as in-depth as you can. And I know that sounds like a non-answer. If you go to our website, and one of the 4 main tiles just above where you find our programs, our forthcoming programs listed, it's called an Indigenous Peoples Gateway. If you click on that and then look for the bibliography, collection bibliography over there on the left-hand side, or Cherokee Records where you were at. Both those, I would, if you wanted to click, Elizabeth, on the collection bibliography, and then tribes, and then you'll scroll down a large list to Cherokee. It's not immediately like knock you off your feet, super helpful, but I just wanted to show you where a list of all the Cherokee specific Indigenous peoples materials we have in our collection. There are a lot of transcribed, indexed, and abstracted rolls of Cherokee. You see that name, Jeff Bowen, going past you there. He's done a lot of indexing and transcription work, really solid work. Again, nothing's perfect in the transcribed format. So looking at these books, if you happen to make your way in, or seeing if they're available in other libraries, the claims that you see, the 1842 claims, you're looking for any record that will have names of Indigenous peoples on them. And you're also looking for records that give you their non-Indigenous name hooked to their Indigenous name. Sometimes those are called transitional records. You're transitioning between 2 names, same person, Indigenous person's name, other name. Indigenous peoples research is not trivial, as I'm sure you know, Mary. You say you've traced your ancestor back to a Cherokee reservation in Virginia. I would look real hard on where that Cherokee reservation is in Virginia. Typically, Cherokee reservations are in North Carolina, not Virginia. So I would just check on that, see if you can get a fine point to if there was a particular band of Cherokee living in that Virginia county. and see where Indigenous peoples identifying as part of the Cherokee tribe or a clan as part of the Cherokee tribe, where specifically they were living in Virginia. Again, North Carolina is more, the homeland place is more the normal or typical place, if I can use that term. So it's worth continuing the investigation. More information is becoming available all the time. You can write to the Cherokee Nation in North Carolina for assistance. They typically want you to kind of well identify what it is you're looking for, because they really don't do many what I'm going to call fishing expeditions, where we're just kind of fishing around for information about an ancestor. It sounds like you've gathered a lot of good information, but I would concentrate on him under the name that you know him. So you say you've traced him back to Virginia. I'd really hone in on where in Virginia and what other kinds of records are there. Where was he actually living? Again, it could be that there was a small pocket, a band of members of the Cherokee Nation living in Virginia, but I don't believe there was a Cherokee reservation in Virginia. I could be wrong, so please check me on that. Find out specifically where he was living, what kind of records are extant for that area, and see if that gives you more clues.
Great. Well, thank you. So we are out of time, folks. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Kurt and Sarah, for joining me today. If you have more questions, please send us an email. Our email is genealogy@acpl.info, which I put that in the chat. If you would like a copy of the chat, because I have been dumping some links in there earlier, send us an email and we'll send that out to you as well. Great. Well, thank you again. Anything last final thoughts?
No, just grateful for people jumping in today. Those were great questions, really good questions. And thank you for offering those and listening to our responses.
Great. Have a good day.